What happened to Jessica Padgett, a young mother of 3 who disappeared without a trace in November 2014? It all started like any other day, but the truth that was uncovered later shocked everyone. Stay with us to discover who was hiding a terrible secret. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. A shocking and mysterious story unfolded in November 2014 in Pennsylvania, USA. A young woman disappeared under strange circumstances, and the police were unable to solve the case for a long time. But when the truth was revealed, it shocked everyone. November 2014 began like any other day. 33-year-old Jessica Padgett, a caring mother of 3 children, was going through her morning routine. She dropped her older kids off at school and then headed to work at a daycare center, taking her 2-year-old child along. Everything seemed normal until noon, when she requested time off to run an errand. Jessica headed to her mother's house just 10 minutes away to send important documents via fax. But she never returned home, and she was not seen alive again. Her colleagues became concerned after more than an hour had passed with no word from her. Calls to Jessica's phone went unanswered. The daycare staff then contacted her husband, Michael. He was stunned. He knew that Jessica had planned to be gone briefly, but her lack of contact alarmed him. He tried calling her himself, but to no avail. Michael then called her mother, Danella, but received an unexpected piece of news. She was in Florida looking at a house. However, she suggested calling her husband, Greg, who might have seen Jessica. But Greg said he hadn't seen Jessica that day. This left everyone puzzled. Where could she have gone? Michael, in despair, called his mother-in-law again to report his wife's disappearance. Danella, in a panic, immediately booked a flight, while Michael contacted the police. 4 hours had passed since Jessica's disappearance, but the police were slow to begin the search. Authorities assumed she had simply turned off her phone or was visiting a friend. But as time passed with no news of her whereabouts, an investigation began. Police interviewed relatives and friends, but no one knew where she was. They checked her route and contacted local hospitals in case she had been admitted, but no leads turned up. At that point, investigators realized the situation was far more serious than they had initially thought. What happened to Jessica Padgett? Why did her trail end so suddenly? The answer to this question was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Jessica Padgett was born in 1980 in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She was an only child, and her parents adored her. Jessica loved children and wanted to work with them, which led her to choose a career as an educator. She had been married to Michael for just 2 months before her disappearance, although they had been together for over 8 years. The couple had 3 children, and in September 2014, they decided to get married. Jessica was happy. She loved her husband and children and could not have simply run away, leaving her family and job behind. No one believed that. Jessica was responsible, loving, and hardworking. Her relatives began to worry that something bad had happened to her. The police attempted to track her phone. Investigators discovered that it had pinged near her workplace, about 1.5 kilometers away, so detectives headed there. They found the missing woman's car, a white Subaru, parked in a store parking lot. The car was empty, as if it had been abandoned. Police searched the area, entered the store, and interviewed the clerk, but he had not seen her. The store had surveillance cameras, and one of the cameras was aimed directly at her car. They obtained the footage for review. The car was unlocked. Investigators searched the inside of the vehicle for clues and found all of Jessica's belongings inside. Her phone, keys, and purse with her wallet. How could she have left all her things behind in the car? This seems suspicious. Upon reviewing the footage, the police saw that Jessica's car had entered the parking lot at 1:15 p.m., stopped, and someone exited the car and walked away. The quality of the footage was poor, so it was impossible to tell whether it was Jessica or someone else. However, the figure appeared to be a man. The figure was tall, taller than Jessica, and the gait appeared to be male. Detectives suspected that something had happened to Jessica, and this man had abducted her. The investigators issued a missing person alert for Jessica and organized a search operation. Police and thousands of volunteers who knew and loved Jessica combed the area where she had disappeared. Jessica's husband created a group on social media to raise awareness, hoping someone might come forward with information. The group quickly gained 5,000 followers. People shared posts, and the family handed out and posted flyers with Jessica's photo. Days passed, but the investigation made no progress. Jessica was still missing. Her husband and mother couldn't find peace, waiting for her return. Detectives focused their attention on searching for the missing woman, who was heading to her mother's house. They speculated that something might have happened to her either on the way or near the house. The police once again called in Jessica's stepfather, Greg, for questioning. The man claimed that he didn't even know she was planning to visit. According to him, he had been busy with errands all day and hadn't seen her. However, Jessica had a key to the house, so she could have entered during his absence. When detectives informed him that Jessica had mentioned to colleagues that she intended to send a fax from her mother's house, Greg unexpectedly stated that this sounded strange since their fax machine had been broken for a long time, and Jessica knew that. This meant she had other plans. Greg then proposed a theory that Jessica's husband, Michael, might be involved in her disappearance. He pointed out that their relationship had been difficult and hinted that he had never approved of his stepdaughter's choice of husband. This information piqued the investigators' interest, as in such cases, the spouse is often the first suspect. However, Michael had an alibi. At the time of his wife's disappearance, he was at work. His story was confirmed, and the suspicion was lifted. However, after hearing Greg's testimony, detectives decided to question Michael again. He was at home with the children and agreed to answer their questions. The man explained that he had left for work early in the morning, took breakfast, and left while his wife was still sleeping. The children had gone to school with Jessica since she had taken the car. Thus, he couldn't have encountered her during the day. However, one detail caught the detective's attention. Michael was a tall man, and his height matched that of a person recorded by the surveillance cameras at the store. This led the police to investigate his alibi more thoroughly. His workplace confirmed that he was indeed there during the specified period. Detectives then focused on the surveillance cameras along Jessica's route. After reviewing the footage, they found that after leaving the daycare parking lot, she headed toward her mother's house but turned around after a few minutes. Her driving style was unusual for Jessica. The car was speeding, crossing intersections chaotically, and at one point even cutting through the shoulder. This raised suspicions that someone else might have been driving, or that Jessica might have been trying to escape from someone. Further analysis of the store's surveillance footage helped move the investigation forward. Detectives closely examined the person who had exited Jessica's car. At first, the footage didn't provide any new leads, but then they reviewed recordings from nearby cameras. They noticed an important detail. The person who got out of Jessica's car soon moved into a pickup truck and drove off. This truck looked familiar to the detectives, and they quickly traced its owner. It was Greg's pickup. Now the suspicion turned toward him. The detectives began to dig deeper into Greg's actions and found that on the day of Jessica's disappearance, he had called her many times, but hadn't mentioned this to the investigators. The police went to his house to talk to him again. They asked why he had called Jessica so many times. Greg seemed surprised by the question and explained that he had been asking her how to install a program on his computer, and she had helped him over the phone. He managed to install the program with her assistance and then left for errands. He denied seeing her. Then the detectives told him they had seen him driving Jessica's car. Greg recalled that on that day, he had left his car for maintenance, and later, a friend had come to pick him up. He drove to a gas station, bought some water and food, and went to work. That's how he ended up in that location. He had moved Jessica's car because he panicked when he saw the car by the house's driveway, fearing he would be accused of kidnapping her. There was no evidence against him, so the police couldn't charge him. They left, but continued gathering evidence against him. Greg ran his own business, and on that day, he was handing out salaries to his employees at the office. Several workers confirmed seeing Greg and receiving their pay. However, there was no confirmation that he had been in the office the entire day. He admitted to going to pick up his car and that he might have done something to Jessica during that time. Investigators went to the auto repair shop, but the workers stated that Greg hadn't brought in his car for service and hadn't been there that day. The detectives went to the gas station to check if anyone had seen him, but the attendants were unsure, as the station had a high traffic volume. They reviewed the surveillance footage and confirmed that Greg had passed by the station. He didn't stop or go inside. The detectives contacted Greg's friend, who had supposedly driven him to pick up his car, but the friend denied it. The investigators then spoke to Jessica's colleagues and learned more about what had really happened. They revealed that someone had been calling Jessica repeatedly that morning, bothering her with questions. But at first, she didn't say who it was and became upset. By noon, the missing woman finally gave in. She asked for time off from work and told her colleagues that it was her stepfather calling and asking for help installing a program on his computer. Since she needed to send some documents by fax, Jessica decided to visit him, help with the program, and send the documents. This is when the detectives realized that all of Greg's statements were lies. They contacted Jessica's mother to get permission to search the house. First, they checked the fax machine, and it was working, contrary to what Greg had claimed. And it wasn't just working. Jessica had used it to send documents at 1 p.m. on the day of her disappearance. This meant she had been in the house. The detectives thoroughly searched the house for evidence, suspecting that Greg might have attacked Jessica there. In the basement, in the trash bin, they found bloody men's sandals, a belt, and napkins. There wasn't much blood, so it couldn't be conclusively determined whether a crime had taken place. Perhaps someone had simply injured themselves. Nothing else suspicious was found. Jessica's mother identified the sandals as Greg's, and they were sent for forensic analysis. The laboratory confirmed that the blood belonged to Jessica. The detectives decided to talk to Greg one more time and press him with all the evidence and inconsistencies in his statements. When he learned about this, he asked for a break to think, and then went with the police to the station. His wife was shocked. She had believed in his innocence until the very end. They had been married for about 22 years, and Greg had seemed like an upstanding person. He had actively participated in the search for Jessica and had been comforting her. At the station, Greg confessed to everything that had happened that day. Jessica came to him around 1 p.m. to help with some documents. She sat down at the computer, installed the necessary software, and sent the files via fax. When she seemingly finished her work and turned to leave, a terrible tragedy occurred. Greg pulled out a gun, and without giving her a chance to escape, shot her in the back of the head. Afterward, he dragged her body into the bedroom, trying to cover up the crime. He drove her car to a store, where he carefully adjusted the seat so that it wouldn't be obvious someone else had been driving. When he returned home, he continued living his normal life as if nothing had happened. At work, he handed out paychecks and behaved as usual to prevent anyone from suspecting his involvement in the murder. But at that moment, her body was lying in his bedroom. In the evening, when Greg returned home, he set up cameras in the bedroom and filmed utterly horrifying scenes that no one could ever imagine. This step became the climax of a meticulously planned crime. He killed his stepdaughter, whom he had known for many years, not out of revenge, but for his twisted desires. After violating her body, Greg buried her near a shed. He didn't stop there. To cover up the evidence, Greg bought all the necessary cleaning supplies, detergents, gloves, and then spent the entire night cleaning the house, trying to erase traces of blood. But despite all his efforts, forensics found numerous bloodstains in different parts of the house, on the mattress, carpet, and other places. A video was also discovered where he committed horrific acts on her body. Interestingly, shortly before the murder, Greg had been frequenting sex shops, purchasing various toys that he later used in the video. This only confirmed that his crime was not impulsive, but carefully planned. When Greg was arrested, his wife filed for divorce, deciding she no longer wanted anything to do with a person who had committed such a monstrous crime. But when it was revealed that Greg had transferred all the property to his name and moved the money to his account before his arrest, her shock grew even deeper. He hired an expensive lawyer who tried to prove that Greg was mentally unstable and unaware of his actions. Greg's relatives claimed that he was a normal, kind man, and no one could believe he was capable of such a thing. However, the prosecutor stated that everything had been carefully planned. Not only did he kill his stepdaughter, but he also created an alibi at work, leaving her car near the store. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. Greg himself, at the trial, admitted that he acted under the influence of intense sexual urges that he could not control. He regretted losing his family, business, home, and everything else, but showed no remorse for killing Jessica. Shocking footage was shown in court that left everyone in the courtroom horrified. These clips played a crucial role in convincing the jury that Greg was a true monster, and that his crime was not the result of a momentary madness, but of cold calculation. He was found guilty of multiple charges, including first-degree murder and corpse desecration. As a result, Greg was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the verdict, Greg tried to appeal the decision, claiming that he had been under the influence of toxic substances mixed with alcohol, which supposedly caused his mental state to cloud. However, his appeal was rejected, and the sentence stood. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss this terrifying story. Thanks for your attention, and see you soon.